She always woke up before the sun. Geneva, Washington, 93 years old and still tending the land her husband built with his bare hands. That ranch wasn't just soil, it was her legacy, her life. Out there in the quiet of Georgia, with the wind brushing through the grass and the same wooden fence her husband painted 50 years ago, Geneva had everything she needed: peace, memory, and time. But the world had changed around her. New neighbors, new rules, and a new homeowners association that didn't care about history, blood, or dignity. It started simple. A letter in the mailbox. Violation: excessive vegetation growth on east fence line. She chuckled and walked back inside. The next week, a knock at the door. Two white men in tucked shirts, clipboards in hand, smiling too much. "Ma'am, we're with the HOA now. There are some updates to the property standards. Just wanted to make sure you're aware." Geneva offered them sweet tea and stayed polite. Southern grace, they declined, and left a yellow envelope. She didn't open it right away. Later that night she did. Failure to comply with notice hash 243 may result in HOA imposed corrective measures, including lien placement or structural removal. She didn't understand half of it, but she felt it. Something was off. She took the letter to the local town office the next day. The receptionist smiled, but behind her eyes was impatience. Geneva waited almost an hour before someone with authority came out to speak with her. They said everything was standard. "Nothing to worry about, ma'am. You just need to trim a few bushes. Just procedural." So she did. Even though those bushes had been there longer than the HOA itself. A week passed, another letter. This one colder, harsher. Multiple violations, property out of alignment with community code, risk of fine escalation. She walked out to her front yard and stared at her porch steps. Uneven, maybe, but her late husband built them, by hand, with care. Now they were being labeled as unsafe visual obstruction. It didn't feel like policy anymore. It felt personal. Her neighbor, Mr. Gill, who had lived next door for 15 years, suddenly stopped waving. His fence now had a "Keep Property Code Compliant" sign. New slogans, new smiles, fake concern. She sat on her rocking chair, eyes fixed on the gravel road ahead. Something had shifted, and she didn't know how deep it went yet. The next HOA letter came certified. Immediate action required. Deadline, 10 days. She called the number on the letter. No one answered. She tried again the next morning. Voicemail. She drove to the HOA office listed on the form, but it was just a converted house with locked doors and a sign taped to the window. By appointment only. Geneva stood there for 10 minutes. No one came out. She turned back toward her car and noticed a man watching her from across the street. Arms folded, staring. She got in and drove home. That night, someone threw eggs at her mailbox. No one saw it, no one heard it, no one cared. The next morning, she cleaned it herself. No complaint, no call, just silence. It had been 70 years since her husband bought this land. They faced worse back then. Jim Crow signs, burning crosses. But they held on, brick by brick, acre by acre. And now, in the name of community code, they were trying to take it all back. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just stood in her kitchen, holding that new envelope with trembling hands. And in that silence, one thought repeated in her mind like a whisper she couldn't ignore. They're not just trying to remove a porch. They're trying to erase a Black legacy. And she had no idea. They weren't done yet. She didn't tell anyone. Not at first. What was she supposed to say? That the place she raised 3 kids, buried her husband, and lived nearly her whole life was suddenly out of compliance? That her porch, where she once handed out lemonade to neighbors' children, was now considered an eyesore? The old woman across the street stopped coming over. Geneva noticed. A man with a clipboard walked the sidewalk every other day. He never looked at her, just at her house, his pen always scribbling something. Then came the whispering. 2 women talking near the church parking lot. One of them pointed at Geneva and said under her breath, "She won't let go. People like her never do." Geneva froze. People like her. She'd heard that before. In 1952, in 1961, in 1983. Nothing had changed. That evening, she sat on the porch swing and watched her neighbor, Paul, mow his lawn. She raised a hand to wave. He didn't wave back, just turned his mower around, eyes on the grass like she wasn't even there. It was subtle, but real. The next day, another letter. Violation, non-standard external paint tone. It was the same white color her husband used for decades. She went to the hardware store anyway, looked at the new codes, talked to a young man behind the counter. He looked annoyed. "Ma'am," he said, "these are the HOA-approved shades. You'll need to repaint it completely." She nodded, said thank you, walked out. Didn't buy anything. She wasn't going to repaint history. That night, her electricity flickered. She looked outside. Street lights worked fine. Her home was the only one in the dark. Coincidence? She reached for the phone, but paused. What was she going to say? They'd call her paranoid, or worse, difficult. That word, difficult. It followed black women like a shadow. Say too much and you're angry. Say too little and you're in denial. Fight back and you're trouble. She was done playing those roles. The next morning, she took a deep breath and walked toward the HOA representative's house. She'd seen where the letters came from. Carlton Myers, white, mid-40s, drives a black truck. Moved into the neighborhood 5 years ago. He opened the door and looked surprised. Yes? I got your notice. I wanted to ask you directly, what's really going on here? He smirked. Just enforcing the rules, ma'am. You know how it is. Standards keep property values up. Geneva looked at him, steady, calm, then said, my house was here before yours, before your rules, before your signatures. He shrugged. Times change. She didn't flinch. Not all of us have the luxury of forgetting history. Carlton smiled, tight and fake. If you need help understanding the process, we can recommend a legal liaison. She walked away, but not before turning back and saying one thing. You ever stand on a porch built by hands bloodied from cotton fields? No? Then maybe stay off mine. She didn't sleep that night, but she didn't cry either. Something inside her had shifted. They were coming for her quietly, without hoods or torches. Now it was paper, policy, and silence. But it was the same hate, and she finally understood. This wasn't about her porch or paint. This was about erasing her. And she was done sitting quietly. She tried every door the system offered. She called the city code office, left voicemails, waited days. When someone finally answered, the woman on the line said, we'll review the case internally. But nothing changed. She walked into the local zoning department, waited in line behind two couples, both white, watched them leave with friendly handshakes. When her turn came, the clerk didn't even make eye contact. Submit your concerns in writing, ma'am. We don't handle verbal disputes. She slid the folder she had prepared across the desk. Photos, copies of her late husband's property deeds, every letter the HOA sent her. The clerk pushed it back. We don't take physical documents anymore. You'll need to upload it through the online portal. Geneva didn't have a computer. She walked out, folder clutched in both hands. She didn't cry, not in public. Outside, a group of men in suits stood near a black SUV, laughing about something. One of them looked her way, then leaned in to whisper to another. They both looked again, smirked. She wasn't invisible. She was targeted. That night, her front gate was open. She knew she closed it. Nothing was stolen, but her back porch door was slightly cracked. She didn't call the police. Because what would she say? That the air felt wrong? That someone was trying to scare her without leaving fingerprints? They just nod politely, then file nothing. She poured herself a glass of water. Her hands shook. The kitchen felt cold, though the oven was still warm. She sat in silence for nearly 2 hours, then reached for the drawer, pulled out the photo, her son in uniform, smiling, standing on the deck of a Navy ship. Tariq Washington, her youngest, her warrior. She hadn't called him. Not yet. She didn't want to disturb his duty. But tonight, she needed more than silence. She dialed. It rang twice. He picked up. Mama? She didn't speak at first. Her breath caught in her throat. Then, quietly, they're trying to take the land. Tariq's voice dropped. What did they do? It started with letters. Then came the fines. Now they're playing games, leaving my gate open, calling my paint illegal. He paused. Did anyone threaten you? Not with words, but with everything else. He was silent, but she could hear it, the shift in his breathing. I'll be there Friday. Tariq. No, Mama. This isn't just your house. It's ours. Daddy built that ranch with hands that bled. I trained with Navy SEALs. Fought wars in places where justice never arrived. I'm not about to let that happen here. She didn't argue. He ended the call with 4 words. I'm coming for them. The next morning, Geneva opened her door to find a new sign on her yard. Under review for community reassessment. No notice, no explanation. Just a metal stake in bold letters. She stared at it, unmoving, as the HOA rep 2 houses down watched from his car sipping coffee. She didn't touch the sign. She just looked toward the road, toward the direction Tariq would come from. And for the first time in weeks, she smiled. Because they didn't know what was coming. The black SUV pulled up slow. No noise, no drama, just quiet precision. Tariq stepped out, boots crunching on the gravel driveway. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in plain jeans and a gray shirt. Nothing about him shouted military, but everything about him felt like control. Geneva stepped out onto the porch, eyes wet but proud. He hugged her, tight, silent. No words needed. Inside, he scanned every letter, every notice, every picture she saved. He read each line twice, marked things down in a notepad. He wasn't just angry, he was calculating. What's the name of the guy who gave you that last sign? Carlton Myers. Tariq nodded, said nothing. That evening, a neighborhood HOA meeting was scheduled at the community center. Tariq didn't ask permission. He walked in 5 minutes after it started. The room paused. White chairs, khaki pants, polos and pearls. Subtle smiles faded the second he stepped in. Not because they knew who he was, but because they could feel it. Carlton, seated at the center table, cleared his throat. Can we help you, sir? Tariq didn't answer right away. He walked slowly toward the front, pulled a folded sheet from his pocket, and placed it on the table. Carlton glanced down, then stiffened. A printed list. Every violation notice Geneva ever received, organized by date, response, and HOA bylaw code. Half the violations didn't match the legal template. Carlton forced a smile. Sir, we can't discuss private HOA disputes in an open forum. Tariq looked at him, calm. It's not private when you post warning signs on my mother's lawn. A woman on the board interrupted, nervous. This is highly irregular. So is targeting a 93-year-old widow without due process, he said. Someone in the room gasped. Carlton leaned forward. Look, we're just following procedure. If you have concerns, you can submit them in writing. I did. Tariq pulled out his phone, clicked open a folder. Filed complaint with Georgia Housing Board. I also filed with the Department of Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity. And forwarded everything to 3 civil rights watchdogs. Carlton's eyes twitched. That's unnecessary. You sure? Tariq asked. Because I brought copies. Everyone in this room will get one tonight. The tension thickened. You're trying to intimidate us, one board member said. No, Tariq said flatly. I'm informing you. The room went silent. Carlton stood up. We don't respond well to threats. I'm not threatening anyone, Tariq replied. But understand something. You've been messing with the wrong family. My father fought for this land. My mother bled for it. I've defended this country in places you couldn't pronounce. I'm not afraid of clipboards and bylaws. He walked toward the back of the room, then turned one last time. You've got 48 hours to remove every unlawful notice, or the next meeting won't be in this room. It'll be in a courtroom. He left without slamming the door. Didn't need to. The silence behind him was louder than anything he could have said. That night, Carlton didn't sleep well. Geneva, however, did. First full night in weeks. Because for the first time, the HOA was on edge, and justice had just stepped through the front gate. The morning after the meeting, Geneva opened her door and found something new. No letter, no warning sign. A drone, hovering over her front yard, camera blinking red. Watching. She stood still, arms folded, refusing to move. After 2 minutes, it flew away. But the message was loud and clear. Tariq reviewed the footage from the home security cam. His jaw tightened. "You sure you didn't file a police report?" he asked. Geneva looked up, calm but firm. "I filed a lifetime of reports, baby. They never cared." Tariq didn't say a word, just picked up his phone. Within hours, posts began to spread. 93-year-old black widow harassed by HOA. Veteran son stands against racist HOA targeting his mother's land. Screenshots of the notices, pictures of the signs, even a clip from the HOA meeting. The internet didn't wait. Within 24 hours, the story exploded. First came the local reporters. A young black woman from Channel 7 knocked on Geneva's door. She listened, asked the right questions, and aired the full segment, unedited. Then came the cameras. Then came the protests. Small at first, neighbors holding signs, "Protect Black landowners," "Stop HOA tyranny." Then the civil rights lawyers showed up. Then the Georgia Land Justice Network. Then the media vans. The same neighbors who looked away before were suddenly asking if Geneva needed help bringing groceries inside. Geneva didn't answer. She just nodded politely. She remembered who stayed silent. One afternoon, Geneva sat on her porch while 3 lawyers interviewed Tariq in the living room. They were building a case, not just for Geneva, but for every family like hers. She looked at the reporters parked across the street, fixing their lighting. She could hear them rehearsing phrases. Elderly black homeowner. Decades-old home under attack. HOA accused of racial targeting. Inside, one of the lawyers turned to Tariq. "We can file for a federal injunction, but we need testimony." He looked at his mother. Geneva stood up. "No one's telling my story for me." She sat in front of the microphone. Her voice shook for the first 5 seconds. Then it didn't. "They told me I was too old to fight, that the rules were the rules. But those rules weren't made for people like me. I've lived through enough to know when something ain't about bushes or paint. It's about pushing us out without ever having to say it out loud." The room was quiet. She continued. "My husband died on this land. He dug the fence posts himself. We raised 3 children here, paid every bill, followed every law, and now they say we don't fit." The lawyer leaned forward. "Do you believe this is racially motivated?" She didn't blink. "I know it is." And that one sentence ended up everywhere. Clipped, posted, retweeted, thousands of shares, hashtags trending, #protect black homes, #stand with Geneva, #HOA exposed. Carlton Myers tried to respond in a press release. HOA decisions are non-discriminatory and follow standard protocol. But someone leaked a group chat from within the board, a message from Carlton. "She's too old to keep up. We can force her out before she realizes what's happening." And just like that, it wasn't a policy dispute anymore. It was evidence. That evening, Tariq walked out onto the porch and handed Geneva a cup of tea. She looked at him, tired but unbroken. "You think they're scared now?" she asked. He nodded. "Scared and exposed." She smiled. "Good, they should be. Because now, the world was watching." The courtroom was small, quiet, and cold. No flashing lights, no media circus. Just polished floors and a few uncomfortable chairs. Geneva sat near the front, hands folded over a weathered Bible. Across the aisle, the HOA board sat rigid. Carlton Myers wouldn't even look her way. Tariq sat beside his mother, dressed in a simple dark suit, posture straight, eyes fixed. The judge entered. Everyone rose, the room hushed. The proceedings began. The HOA's attorney spoke first, calm, technical, robotic. Your Honor, we're simply enforcing the community standards. This is not a personal matter. It's administrative. Every homeowner is subject to the same policies. The judge nodded. And the complaints of harassment, the inconsistencies in enforcement? The lawyer cleared his throat. Coincidence. Perhaps miscommunication. Then came Geneva's turn. The attorney stepped aside, and Geneva walked to the stand. She moved slowly, carefully. But when she sat down and raised her eyes, the room felt different. The judge looked at her. Mrs. Washington, you may speak freely. She adjusted the mic. I'm not here to beg or to fight. I'm here to tell the truth. Silence. For 70 years, I've lived on that land. I've paid every tax, followed every rule. I've buried my husband there. I've raised children, lost neighbors, survived cancer, and sat through more city meetings than I can count. But never, not once did I feel unsafe in my own home. Until they came. Her voice didn't shake now. It carried. They say it's about compliance, but my neighbor's fence is broken, and no one said a word. The man 3 doors down has an unapproved garage, no letters. But me, I get notices, fines, threats, a drone, a cracked door in the night. Tariq watched the jury. They weren't just listening. They were absorbing. Geneva took a deep breath. This isn't just about paint colors or porch steps. This is about telling a black woman she doesn't belong without saying the words. Carlton finally looked up, and for the first time, he looked nervous. The opposing lawyer stood to object. Relevance, Your Honor. The judge raised a hand. Let her finish. Geneva leaned forward. My husband fought in World War II. He was denied a GI Bill because of his skin. So he bought land, built a life, with no help, no handouts. And now, 50 years later, this board wants to undo all of that with a few printed notices and a smile. The room was still. I'm not moving, I'm not folding, and I'm not dying quietly so someone else can call my home a development opportunity. The judge looked down at the file, then looked at Carlton. Mr. Myers, would you like to respond? Carlton stood, sweating. This isn't personal. We follow the rules. The judge raised an eyebrow. Including sending notices without proper legal grounds? Including unauthorized surveillance? Carlton hesitated. We were trying to maintain standards. The judge closed the folder slowly. You weren't maintaining standards. You were targeting someone who represents everything your rules were built to erase. Gas echoed. Carlton sat down, pale. The judge turned to Geneva. You won't receive another notice. You won't pay a single fine. And this HOA will face a formal state-level investigation. Geneva didn't blink. Justice had finally spoken. And it spoke loud. It rained that night. Not hard. Just enough to make the dirt smell like memory. Geneva sat on her porch again. Same spot, same chair. But this time she wasn't watching for threats. She was just watching the land. The fence was still crooked. The porch steps still uneven. And everything was exactly how it should be. Across the street, the HOA signs had vanished. Carlton's house had the blinds shut tight. Tariq stood by the gate, arms folded, quiet. They didn't celebrate. There were no fireworks, just a breath of air that finally didn't feel heavy. Tariq walked over and sat beside her. They'll try again, Geneva said softly. Let them, Tariq replied. We'll still be here. She handed him an old photo, her and her husband, in front of the same house decades ago. The paint was fresh, the grass a little taller, but the love, the fight, the dignity, it was all still there. He would have been proud, Tariq said, voice low. Geneva smiled. He always said, this land would outlast the hate. They sat in silence for a while. A small bird landed on the railing, shook off the rain, and flew off again. No drama, no noise, just life continuing. In the distance, a group of kids played in the next yard. One of them waved at Geneva. This time she waved back, and the boy smiled. She looked out at the trees, the driveway, the sky turning orange. then whispered to no one in particular, "We didn't just keep the house, we kept the history." Tariq stood up, kissed her forehead, and walked inside. Geneva rocked slowly in her chair, watching the sunset hit the roof of her home. The home that stayed, the home that fought, the home they would never again try to erase.